Hi, in this video I'm going to read the fourth fairy tale of this book, 1 Billion and 1 Dirham Financial Fairy Tales. It's called Sinbad the Bond Salesman, obviously based on Sinbad the Sailor. Sinbad the Bond Salesman. Being tired and hungry, Sinbad the fund accountant takes a break in the reception area of his investment bank. Smoking a cigarette, he complains to his wife on the phone that it's not fair that some of the staff are so poor whilst others earn so much. A bond salesman with a resembling name, Sin-Bad, hears this and reaches out to him. Sinbad the bond salesman tells Sinbad the fund accountant that he was also poor once. Do you want to know why I am so wealthy now and why you are not? Please tell me, said Sinbad the fund accountant. I would like to know why. That is, said Sinbad the bond salesman, because I am a star investment banker and you are not. Oh, said Sinbad the fund accountant. So what makes you a star investment banker and how can I become one? Sinbad the bond salesman then begins the narrative of his adventures that turned him from a bond salesman into a star investment banker. The first voyage, the short seller's island. Having inherited some wealth, Sinbad decides to settle for an island with a pleasant tax climate that is known as Short Seller's Island. Soon after he starts short selling overvalued bonds, the entire island goes under. Fortunately, Sinbad, showing the first characteristics of the star investment banker he is becoming, keeps afloat by selectively grabbing some highly profitable long positions that are floating around the island. He returns home safely and contemplates his next voyage. Second voyage, the bullish bullion market. Thanks to the wealth he has made on his first voyage, Sinbad has a lot of leisure time on his hands. But he's bored and embarks on a second voyage that accidentally leaves him in a bullion market that is bullish. Bullish as he is himself, Sinbad the bond salesman embraces this market of precious metals. He passes a country of a dominant market party that protects the bullish bullion market. It so happens that numerous investors lure the dominant market party, throwing big chunks of gold, palladium and platinum at him. Sinbad cleverly does a block trade on the back of a big chunk of rhodium when the dominant market party bites. The bullish bullion market fulfills its expectation and takes him home unharmed on a wave of volatility with the riches he obtains. The third voyage, the ruthless equity market and huge investors. Sinbad's craving to invest in more of the world's markets takes him on another voyage. As fate would have it, Sinbad and his fellow investors end in a ruthless light touch regulated equity market. The ruthless equity market is swallowing the investors, bankrupting them one a day, starting with fellow star investment banker with a stiff upper lip. Worried about his fate, Sinbad and his fellow investors decide to trick the ruthless equity market. They manage to spread rumors that move the markets in an opposite direction. They successfully blind the ruthless equity market and escape front running. They escape assaults from regulators and somehow end up in a different market, which has huge investors that destroy the value of their equity by dumping large quantities of it. Fearing bankruptcy, they run into a niche market, only to find that there are more of the huge investors that start dumping their equity. Sinbad's fellow investors get scattered, and Sinbad, alone now, builds himself a shelter of equity derivative hedges to keep the huge investors from hurting him. He spends the night in fear and by morning invests in an index tracking fund that happens to bail out the companies he is investing in. The manager of the fund is awed by his investment adventure stories and tells the ultimate beneficial owner about it, an honest man. He decides to compensate Sinbad for his hardship and pays him out a return on his investment as if he invested a year earlier, making Sinbad wealthier yet again. The fourth voyage, cannibalism, customs and chapter 11. Sinbad joins another group of investors to go on a new journey. They invest in different markets, peacefully for a while. But one day, volatility turns the market of his kingdom wild and fearsome. Market regulation also changes direction, and Sinbad's special purpose vehicle is turned upside down, throwing all his investors into a wave of negative return on investment. The investors, barely surviving from bankruptcy, hold on to whatever backstop credit has been available to them. They move into Chapter 11 and reach a restructuring agreement. Sinbad doesn't like the animal behavior of his investors, and soon he realizes that the backstop lenders are fattening them in order to cannibalize them. The market has unusual customs regulations. Whenever he tries to sell his bonds, he discovers that taxes are levied on his sales proceeds that make him lose a significant return. He survives for a few days and cleverly seeks counsel from a tax advisor that finds a loophole and rescues him in an offshore jurisdiction where he refinances himself at an attractive negative interest rate. The fifth voyage. Frontrunners and monkeys. You might think that Sinbad would give up investing after near bankruptcy experience during his fourth voyage, but his love for investing compels him to continue. So this time, Sinbad buys a well-established bond management house and embarks on another investment journey. A few weeks into the journey, his fund managers halt near the bullish bullion market. Out of curiosity, some fund managers invest in platinum-backed securities, expecting the investment to beat the benchmark. When they start making some return on their investment, the fund managers charge their management fees and feast on their carried interest. When Sinbad notices what his fund managers have done, he senses that they are in danger and orders them to liquidate their entire positions and leave the market immediately. 2 hours following the sales of their positions, two giant investors seek reversal of the trades and sink the fund. Sinbad somehow manages to get lawyers to prevent the reversal and flees into the next market. On exploring the market, he finds that it's sweet-smelling investment opportunities and low-hanging fruit. He invests and sleeps like a savings account investor that night. The next morning, he finds an old investor in a pinstripe suit, investing in parallel to him and watching his moves. He asks Sinbad to co-invest until the evening. Sinbad reluctantly agrees and backs the old investor until evening. The old investor turns out to be front-running on Sinbad's investment, nearly strangling him. Sinbad carries the loss after day, as the old man adds loss after loss, nearly choking Sinbad each time Sinbad asks him to back off. One day, Sinbad and the old investor come across what looks like a juicy investment in credit-linked notes. Sinbad splits it into tranches and presents the most toxic tranche to the old investor. The old investor participates in the tranche and becomes so caught up in preventing his losses that Sinbad manages to separate from him. He liquidates his investment and returns home. On the way back, he passes by a monkey-infested island and invests in the monkey index. He amasses a lot of money by doing so and returns home wealthier than before. The sixth voyage. Exotic reinsurance. Sinbad has all the money and peace he could wish for, but his mind tricks him into embarking on another investment voyage, for the thrill and adventures it gives him. He moves into several alternative investment vehicles and rides the waves of some emerging markets, making some money on the way. One day, the director of a special purpose vehicle in which he has invested comes wailing to the investors. As the director pours his heart out about market regulation, the purpose of special purpose vehicle is rendered obsolete by a new regulation and the SPV becomes insolvent. Most investors in the fund lose all of their invested capital, but Sinbad, being the star investment banker he has become, survives by having grabbed a reinsurance contract he came across that covers precisely the risk of the new regulation. He decides to explore the market in which the fund hit some defaults and speaks to its people. The island has precious reinsurance contracts to underwrite. Sadly, the island has little nightlife to be entertained, and the other surviving investors get bored to death, one after another. Sinbad sets up his own SPV, loads his collected assets onto it, and continues investing in a local purpose. As he does this, he enters a loophole in the market and discovers civilized local investors. On talking to them and looking at their beautiful Bermudas, he discovers he is in Bermuda. The Queen's representative is happy to see Sinbad and to hear of his adventures in other markets. She sends Sinbad home with plenty of reinsured catastrophe bonds as a relationship gift. As he passes the Bermuda Triangle, he vanishes off the radar for a while, which triggers a payout on the reinsurance contracts. He happily collects the proceeds on the way home. The seventh voyage, Ponzi Island. Sinbad is not very happy returning home and doing nothing after his latest investment voyage. He sails the seven seas again and stops underway to participate in an investment scheme. He is happy with the generous and surprisingly stable returns for quite some time. After a while, the scheme is suddenly closed and investors can't get out, creating turmoil. One of his fellow investors, a forensic accountant, investigates the pyramid-shaped surroundings. "We've reached the furthest corner of the world," he says with a sad voice. "Ponzi Island." The investors see no way out and are sure their returns will vanish as vicious sharks are known to inhabit the waters around Ponzi Island. After barely surviving the fees of these accountants, lawyers, custodians, and managers of the investment scheme, Sinbad's lawyers find an exit clause at the base of the pyramid and he secures a departure. Holding on to a raft built of his cash, he keeps afloat for 2 days and washes onto a white sandy offshore jurisdiction. Just before his raft is confiscated by some tax lawyers that claim a lien on it for giving sailing directions towards low headwind areas and tuning the wind to blow in his sails, Sinbad buys a yacht from the cash that formed the rudder. He sails off and is welcomed on a nearby island by the wealthy blonde boss of a record company who hosts him for some time. He believes Sinbad is a real star investment banker after all his adventures in the seven markets and proposes Sinbad to marry his daughter. Sinbad accepts and returns home with her. She makes him promise to never invest again, a promise he keeps until he breaks it. After narrating the story of this last voyage, Sinbad asks Sinbad the fund accountant, "So now you have heard of my adventures and hardships to become a star investment banker. Do you still think it's unfair that I am one?" The fund accountant apologizes and the two decide to be friends forever.